The Middle East was hit with over 1,000 years of drought. It was caused by a short ice age called the Younger Dryas, which brought glaciers to Europe and famine to the Fertile Crescent. It was a climate catastrophe. Deep in the sand and suffering, the hunters changed their way of life. Some people escaped to the few oases with water and good soil. Here, they learnt to plant crops and became the world's first farmers. Others searched desperately for game across their traditional hunting lands. But the drought made the animals scarce. To save themselves, they took possession of their prey. The fireplaces of these hunters reveal the bones of goats, which were kept in herds. They were the very first domesticated farm animals. Archaeologist Melinda Zader is tracking the way goats changed as they were domesticated. Her evidence comes from a huge collection of bones gathered from across the entire Middle East. The changes are most obvious in the horns.
You can see on this big guy here from the highlands of Iran, a wild Bezor goat. He's got a very large horn. It's sharply keeled. It's rounded in its sort of profile here. And it goes back in what they call a scimitar shape. And this is very distinctive of the wild goat. It's quite different from what we see in this fellow here, this domestic goat, where the horn is now flattened on the inside, it's twisted, and obviously it's quite a bit smaller. Now the reason for that is that in the wild, this kind of a horn gives the males a competitive advantage in competing for females. In the domestic situation, the males aren't competing for females, but the herder is selecting who breeds with whom. So there's really no need for this large equipment.
Today in the Middle East, people are still herding goats in the same way. The first herders selected smaller and less aggressive animals, removing the very traits the animals needed to survive in the wild. In return, the herders provided food and protection. They soon added other animals to their herds. This one small part of the world supplied almost all our domesticated species. Alongside goats and sheep were pigs. This pottery figure from Turkey is 8,000 years old. Cows were early beasts of burden.
We tend to look at domestication of animals as a big lose-lose situation for the animals. But really, from a Darwinian perspective, it's a big win-win, because domestic animals, through their collaboration with humans, are able to outcompete their wild progenitors. For the humans, obviously, they're obtaining resources, either plant or animal. It may not be as nutritious or even as necessarily as bountiful a diet as they were getting from hunting and gathering, but there is an element of security and predictability that this kind of resource provides.
For the herders, it was a brilliant idea. By keeping the animals alive and breeding them, they guaranteed the supply of meat.